There are moments when everything breaks, but nothing is truly lost. Just before destiny turns, silence gets louder than sound, and the soul, once forgotten, begins to whisper again. It doesn't begin with light. It begins with something going quiet inside you. A room where your name no longer echoes. An invisible exile, not from the world, but from the thread that once connected you to it. You try to explain it, but there are no words. Only an ache, ancient and unnamed. Perhaps you've been here before. In another life, another silence. This isn't a crisis. It's a sacred rupture. The soul making room for what no longer fits in your old self. When destiny is about to turn, the universe doesn't shout. It whispers. And that whisper is the beginning of your return. A woman once dreamed of a crumbling house, walls collapsing, windows breaking, yet in the center, untouched, a glowing lantern pulsed. She awoke, weeping, not from fear, but from recognition. In an ancient myth, a traveler reached the edge of a desert and heard a bird singing at night, not a song of joy, but a mourning, a signal that his path was ending and something else wanted to be born. In the forest of forgotten things, a child found a cracked mirror buried under moss. When he looked into it, he saw not his reflection, but the face of his older self, crying and waiting. The collapse we fear is often a coded message from the psyche. In Jungian terms, the self orchestrates breakdowns when the ego can no longer carry the weight of its disconnection. The soul whispers through symptoms, fatigue, restlessness, and inexplicable grief, because it knows words will be ignored. This is the effect of the sacred dissonance. What no longer aligns must dissolve. The psyche speaks in ruins before it speaks in rebirth. Have you been waking up, feeling like something is pulling you from behind your ribs? Do you feel surrounded and still profoundly alone? Have you stopped recognizing who you've become, yet don't know the way back? That feeling isn't madness. It's the soul, whispering that the old road is ending. Tonight, before you fall asleep, ask silently, what part of me is trying to return through this discomfort? Don't try to answer, just listen. Let the question echo in the cave of your being. The universe doesn't send signs to your mind, it sends symbols to your silence. Before rebirth, something always breaks, not violently, but in slow, quiet collapses that only the soul notices. The end rarely announces itself as an ending. It often disguises itself as exhaustion. There comes a moment when the familiar no longer feels safe, not because it has changed, but because you have. You wake up and your body feels heavier. Your laughter doesn't echo the same way. The places you once called home now feel like cages woven by routine. The self you've built begins to tremble, not from failure, but from inner rebellion. This is how the end begins, not with a scream, but with a slow unraveling. In archetypal transitions, what we call breakdown is the first breath of the emerging soul. When the old skin becomes too tight, the soul begins to press against its seams, and life, in its brutal wisdom, begins to dismantle what no longer serves. The crumbling is sacred. It's the sound of the false self being disassembled by grace. In a forgotten town, a man returned to his childhood home. Everything was as he remembered. The smell of the wood, the echo of his footsteps. Yet he couldn't breathe. He sat in his old room and felt like he was suffocating. The walls hadn't changed. He had. A woman sat in her car after work, unable to turn the key. Her hands shook, her chest tightened, but not from panic, from the quiet truth that this life no longer fit. A single tear fell, and she whispered, "I can't do this anymore." The caterpillar doesn't die. It dissolves. It turns to formlessness inside the cocoon before the butterfly emerges. What if your pain is not destruction, but dissolution? According to polyvagal theory, the body detects threats before the mind understands. What we call burnout is often a somatic signal of inner misalignment. In Jungian terms, this phase mirrors the archetype of psychic death, the loss of ego stability before a reconfiguration. You begin to feel alienated from the life you built because the soul has outgrown the architecture of survival. This is not weakness, this is a right. The right of inner evacuation before sacred construction. Have you been moving through your days like a ghost in your own body? Do you feel like life has become a performance and you no longer remember your original script? Have you sensed something crumbling quietly beneath the surface of your routines? You're not failing, you're transforming. The soul breaks what no longer serves. Sit still for 5 minutes today. No music, no phone, no distractions. Ask your body, where are you tired of pretending? Then place your hand on that part. Breathe. Stay. What crumbles is not your life. It's the illusion that kept you small. There are nights that don't end with sunrise. There are silences that scream louder than pain. And there are voids that are not empty, but pregnant with the next version of you. Sometimes the world goes quiet. Not around you, but inside you. You laugh less. You speak less. Not because you're at peace, but because something ancient is stirring. The joy you once faked no longer fools even yourself. Your soul, once whispering, now waits. Deeper, darker. No one around you notices, but you feel it. The invisible descent into a silence so thick it feels like exile. This is not depression. This is not failure. This is the dark night of the soul, a sacred initiation disguised as despair. The ego calls it loss, but the soul calls it return. Return to essence, return to the question, return to the cave. A monk once locked himself in a cave for 40 days, seeking visions, but nothing came. Only silence, hunger, shadows on the wall. On the final night he wept, and in the stillness he heard his own soul say, "I've been here all along." In a recurring dream, a woman walks through a foggy forest where time doesn't exist. She is barefoot, alone, and the trees whisper her name. She's not afraid, but she doesn't know why she's there, until she finds a single candle burning at the base of a tree. The womb is dark, silent, and tight. The fetus knows nothing of light, yet it's in the darkness that life prepares to emerge. Jung believed that the greatest breakthroughs come through descent, not ascension. The ego, constructed to protect us, resists this descent by naming it crisis or depression. But the soul moves in spiral time. It doesn't collapse. It contracts to gestate truth. This is the moment when ancestral patterns begin to tremble. You are no longer who you were, and not yet who you're becoming. It is the alchemical void, the sacred space between stories. Do you wake up and feel like you've forgotten why? Do you long for something, but can't name what it is? Do you feel like you're disappearing, not to others, but to yourself? That feeling isn't emptiness. It's the soul clearing the stage for something true. Tonight, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask this instead. What is this silence preparing me for? Then imagine your soul as a cave. Enter it in imagination and sit. No words, just presence. The void isn't your enemy. It's the birthplace of your next becoming. The universe rarely speaks in words. It speaks in patterns, echoes, and strange alignments. And if you listen with the soul, the ordinary becomes a doorway. Sometimes you begin to notice things, odd repetitions, strange timings, dreams that linger like perfume. A name you hadn't heard in years suddenly appears everywhere. You drop a cup, and it shatters like your childhood memory. You tell yourself it's just coincidence, but something deeper stirs. A quiet certainty that life is trying to get your attention. And the more you resist, the louder it gets. Because symbols don't wait to be understood. They arrive to rearrange you. We are not just thinking beings. We are symbolic receivers. Before the mind understands, the soul recognizes patterns. The universe is not silent. It's constantly speaking through dreams, chance encounters, objects falling, numbers repeating, time bending, not to confuse you, but to awaken you. A man dreamt 3 nights in a row of an old key in a box of ash. On the 4th day, he walked into a bookstore and the first thing he saw was a book titled The Key Beneath the Ash. He bought it. That book changed the course of his life. A woman kept seeing blackbirds at her window. At first, she ignored it, but the same night her grandmother appeared in a dream saying, "You're not listening." She quit her job the next morning with no plan. Within weeks, her health began to improve. In a myth from the Andes, a traveler ignored the same stone on his path 3 times. Only when he stopped and touched it did he find a message etched beneath it. The door opens when the eyes begin to see. From a Jungian perspective, these synchronicities are psychoid events, bridges between psyche and matter. They occur when the unconscious tries to break into waking reality. In states of inner transition, the symbolic mind becomes more porous. Dreams become clearer. Encounters become charged. Time seems to bend. This is not woo-woo. It's sacred pattern recognition. The soul, like a shaman, dances between worlds and leaves feathers, mirrors, or cracks for us to follow. Have you felt like something is guiding you, but you don't know what? Have you noticed a word, a name, or an image appearing too often to ignore? Do you dream of places that feel more like memories than imagination? This isn't illusion. This is your soul translating the invisible into symbol. Choose one symbol, a recurring image, number, name, or dream fragment. Write it down. Then write, "What could this be trying to open in me?" Let the question remain unanswered. Symbols don't explain. They initiate. A symbol doesn't tell you the truth. It reveals the doorway through which truth arrives. What we call intuition is not magic. It's memory, sacred, embodied, and older than logic. Sometimes the body knows before the mind is even awake. Have you ever felt the sudden urge to turn around and someone was watching? Or walked into a room and your skin tingled with unease for no visible reason? You doubted it. You always do, because you were taught to trust the rational mind and silence the wisdom in your bones. But beneath your logic, there's an ancient language. It speaks in pulses, in stomach knots, in shivers, in goosebumps when the soul recognizes something. It is your nervous system remembering what your mind forgot. Intuition is not irrational. It's pre-rational, older than thought, wired into your nervous system like a sacred antenna. Your body is not just a vessel. It is an oracle, constantly translating spiritual data into felt signals. Dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin, these are not just chemicals. They are the neurochemical alphabet of your inner myth. A child wandered into the forest and felt drawn to a specific tree. Years later in therapy, she remembered that exact tree from a traumatic event. The body had encoded what the mind had erased. A man felt a strange peace every time he passed an abandoned train station. After journaling his dreams, he realized the station symbolized missed departures, and his soul was calling him to stop waiting and choose. The ancient Sufis believed that the heart had 500 eyes, not to see the world, but to sense the truth behind the veil. The polyvagal theory teaches us that our body perceives safety or danger milliseconds before we can name it. The ventral vagus nerve is the conductor of this silent orchestra, decoding tone of voice, facial cues, and energetic shifts. Intuition, then, is not guessing. It is spiritual resonance encoded in the body's intelligence. From a soul psychology perspective, intuition is emotional memory shaped by experience, trauma, longing, and ancestral echoes. It is the non-linear wisdom that emerges when the mind finally pauses. Have you ever had a bad feeling and ignored it, only to regret it later? Have you ever known something without knowing how you knew it? Have you ever felt something in your body shift, even when your life looked fine? That's not coincidence. That's your inner oracle awakening. Next time your body reacts, chills, nausea, butterflies, tension, pause. Ask, what truth is my body trying to show me before my mind interrupts? Let your attention rest there. Feel before you think. Intuition is not a voice in your head. It's a pulse in your soul. Sometimes destiny arrives and you flinch. Not because it's wrong, but because it's real. The soul remembers asking, but the body remembers surviving without it. You prayed for love, but now that it knocks, you feel like hiding. You longed for change, and when it comes, panic rises in your throat. You say you want healing, yet part of you clings to the pain like a sacred identity. Because for so long, survival was your story, and now the new story feels like betrayal. How do you receive what your wounds don't believe you deserve? Receiving is an initiation, not of the mind, but of the nervous system, the lineage, the memory stored in silence. Fulfillment can feel threatening to a psyche trained in lack, so when the soul's request begins to manifest, the ego panics, the body tightens, and the past tries to reclaim you. This is not self-sabotage, it's a sacred threshold. A woman finally met someone who loved her without games, but she kept picking fights, pushing them away, fearing the silence after kindness. She wasn't afraid of being hurt, she was afraid of being safe. A man got the job he always dreamed of. The day before he started, he fell mysteriously ill, not from disease but from the psychic weight of stepping into joy. In a forgotten myth, a warrior reached the gates of paradise and turned back, not because he didn't want it, but because he didn't know who he was without the war. The trauma of fulfillment occurs when your inner world is not yet calibrated to hold what you desire. In attachment psychology, the nervous system becomes loyal to what it survived, not what it longs for. In soul work, this creates an identity loop. If I'm no longer the one who suffers, who am I? To break the loop, you must grieve the part of you that only knew love through longing, not presence. This is the sacred grief of expansion. Do you find yourself stepping back, right when things start to get better? Do you feel strangely guilty when you feel joy, as if you're betraying your pain? Do you keep rehearsing your wounds, even when healing begins to emerge? Maybe you're not afraid of losing, maybe you're afraid of finally winning. Today, write a letter, not to your past, but to your future self. Begin with, I am learning to let myself receive, and notice what part of you wants to stop writing. That's the threshold. Sometimes what we fear most is the life that finally says yes to us. Before life changes, reality glitches. Not in big explosions, but in tiny ruptures that feel oddly sacred. The soul doesn't knock, it cracks the pattern open. You've been living on repeat. Same thoughts, same routines, same echoes. And just when you think nothing will ever shift, something breaks. The train is late. You meet someone who speaks a single sentence that won't leave you. You see a bird land in the exact place where you buried your dreams. It's nothing, and yet everything, because something cracks open time itself, and suddenly the real begins to leak through. Every transformation begins with a distortion in the script, a tear in the fabric of normal. This isn't randomness. It's the archetype of the pattern break, when the soul interrupts the ego's routine to begin its own story. Destiny does not arrive with trumpets, it arrives in anomalies. A woman dropped her phone and it shattered. She bent to pick it up and saw a sticker beneath the bench that said, "It's time to go." A man heard a child say a phrase that his mother, long past, used to say, word for word. He wept in public, not from sadness, but recognition. In an African myth, the gods disguised destiny as a mistake. Only those who paused in confusion could recognize it. In depth psychology, the unconscious doesn't just live inside the mind, it leaks into external reality. Moments of liminality, when something doesn't quite fit, signal that the old narrative is cracking. These are sacred anomalies. They are interruptions with intention. The psyche, the body, and even the environment begin to collaborate with your transition. You are not losing your mind. You are entering symbolic time. Have you ever had a moment so small and yet it changed you forever? A glance, a phrase, a detour that became a doorway? Did you sense that reality bent for just a second and something came through? That's not random, that's your soul rewriting the script. Today, notice what doesn't fit. The interruption, the delay, the unexpected word. Ask, what is trying to break the loop today? Don't resist the crack. Step through it. The soul doesn't wait for permission. It breaks the pattern when it's time to remember. When the soul begins to move, the body follows, not always gently. The night wakes you. The skin remembers. And life, like a hidden oracle, starts rearranging itself around your transition. Lately, you've been waking up between 3 and 5 a.m. Your body aches without explanation. You feel a strange nostalgia for people you've never met, for lives you've never lived. Your dreams have become vivid, flooded with symbols, rivers, old houses, mirrors. Nothing is technically wrong, yet everything feels like it's shifting. You're not imagining it. You're crossing a spiritual threshold, and your body is the altar where the ritual unfolds. When a soul initiates transformation, it doesn't just send thoughts, it sends symptoms. The body doesn't break, it translates. It echoes the inner fragmentation, the myth unfolding inside. Dreams sharpen. Sleep becomes symbolic. Even illness can arrive, not as punishment but as message. A woman dreamed of an ocean flooding her childhood home. She woke up in tears and the next day received news that her estranged father had passed. Her dream wasn't prediction, it was emotional prophecy. A man's back ached every morning, and no doctor could explain it. In somatic therapy, he remembered the exact posture he held as a child when hiding from his parents' fights. His body had been carrying a memory. In ancient traditions, waking between 3 and 5 a.m. was called the soul hour, a time when veils thin and spirit knocks quietly on the door of consciousness. According to neurospiritual theories, our sleep cycles shift during archetypal crossings. The psyche becomes more active in dreams because the waking mind can no longer contain the symbolic charge. What appears as insomnia is sometimes an invitation to soul dialogue. In embodiment psychology, the body holds unprocessed memories, and during transformation it begins to release them through fatigue, inflammation, tears, even trembling. This is not regression, it is a sacred detox. Have your dreams become more vivid lately, or more chaotic? Do you wake up exhausted even after a full night's sleep? Has your body been more sensitive, more reactive, almost like it's remembering something? That's not disorder, that's integration in progress. Keep a dream altar beside your bed. Each morning, write one image from your dream, no matter how strange. Then ask, what is this image trying to show me about my crossing? Treat your sleep like a temple. When the soul crosses a threshold, the body becomes a sacred text. The harder you search, the further it feels, but when you sit down in stillness, the doorway appears. Sometimes the only way to find is to stop looking. You've read the books, followed the practices, chased the signs. You've tried to fix yourself, heal yourself, find yourself, and yet the more you strive, the more distant the answer becomes. There's a fatigue that comes not from pain, but from over-seeking, a subtle grief in chasing something you can't name and never catching it, maybe. The search is what keeps the door closed. There is a portal in surrender, not the passive kind, but the sacred kind, the reverent pause that honors mystery. Destiny doesn't need to be hunted. It needs psychic space to arrive. When you stop grasping, the universe stops hiding. A woman spent years chasing signs, rituals, teachers. One night, she simply lit a candle and sat. No intention, no prayer, just stillness. That night, she dreamed of a staircase inside her chest. A man wandered the desert in search of a sacred well. He collapsed from exhaustion. Where he fell, the ground softened and water rose. In a Taoist parable, the master tells the student, "The butterfly lands not on the hand that reaches, but on the one that rests." From the lens of self-determination theory, deep fulfillment emerges not from control, but from inner alignment. In depth psychology, relentless seeking is often the ego's way to avoid being still with the soul. The search can become a distraction from the very essence we long for. True portals open in states of non-doing, when consciousness is receptive, not performative. This is not about giving up. It's about creating space for what's already trying to emerge. Have you been running, but feel like you're circling the same place? Do you find that the more you try to fix your life, the more exhausted you feel? Has the silence started to feel more honest than the next goal? Maybe what you're seeking is already waiting for you to stop chasing. Take one desire, one thing you've been spiritually chasing. For one day, release it. Don't think about it. Don't visualize it. Don't try to attract it. Instead, say, "If this is meant for me, let it arrive through grace." Then be still. Watch what arises instead. The soul doesn't arrive through effort. It returns through empty space. The hero climbs. The magician dissolves. The hero conquers. The magician transforms. At some point, your power stops being in what you seek and starts in what you alchemize. You've spent your life in motion, solving, pushing, becoming. You were the fighter, the seeker, the one who carried the family's silence like armor. But now, even victory feels empty. The sword is heavy, the path is dry, and something inside you whispers, "Stop fighting, start transmuting." There is a sacred transition between the hero archetype and the magician archetype. The hero is necessary for survival, individuation, growth, but the magician emerges when the soul has tasted both triumph and ruin and is ready to turn pain into symbol. It's not about quitting the journey. It's about changing the frequency of the journey. A warrior laid his sword beside a river. The current washed over it for days. When he returned, it was no longer a weapon. It was a tuning fork. He began to heal with vibration. A woman burned all her journals, not in anger, but in ritual. As the pages turned to ash, she whispered, "Now my story belongs to the fire." In ancient Egypt, the magician was not the one who cast spells, but the one who could hear the name of a god in silence. In Jungian psychology, the hero is the archetype of the ego's strength, the quest for meaning through action. But the magician represents the transpersonal psyche, the part of us that weaves shadow and light into wholeness. This transition often comes after a symbolic death, a burnout, betrayal, loss, or surrender. It is the beginning of internal sovereignty, no longer controlled by external outcomes, but moved by inner resonance. The magician doesn't conquer the world, they translate it into soul language. Have you noticed that the chase no longer excites you? That you crave meaning more than achievement? That you long not to win, but to understand, to transmute, to embody? Maybe your inner hero has done enough. Maybe it's time for the magician to rise. Tonight, close your eyes and imagine two figures, one holding a sword, the other holding light in their palms. Ask yourself, which part of me needs to step forward now? Then let the image shift, dissolve, evolve. When the hero lets go of the fight, the magician begins to create reality from within. The soul doesn't scream. It whispers, once, and if you're quiet enough, you'll feel it, that sacred dissonance before everything changes. There's a strange moment, just before transformation. You still look the same. Your life still looks the same. But inside, something has already turned. A softness where there was urgency, a clarity inside the confusion. It's not peace, not yet. But it's the echo of your future self calling from across the veil. And the pain? It often gets louder just before it releases, because the soul is almost through. The final sign is not external, it's internal coherence in the midst of external chaos. The world may still resist, the people may still doubt, but you feel something ancient whisper, it's time. This is the soul's yes, long before reality agrees. A woman sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by unpaid bills. But instead of panic, she felt a strange peace. Not because the problem was solved, but because she had already changed. A man stood on the train platform. He had no ticket, no plan, but something in his chest pulsed like a drum. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew staying would mean soul death. In a Tibetan story, the final guardian of the temple is doubt. Only those who walk forward despite the fear are allowed in. In depth psychology, this phase is called the threshold moment, when the unconscious material has been integrated enough to shift the psychic structure, yet reality has not caught up. This causes cognitive dissonance. The mind says, it's not time, but the soul says it already happened. This is the test of trust, not in something outside, but in the resonance inside your bones. Do you feel like something is about to change? Even if you can't prove it, does part of you already feel free, even if nothing outside confirms it yet? Have you felt an inner yes, while everything around you still says no? That's not delusion. That's destiny waking up in advance. Tonight, write one sentence. I already crossed, even if the world hasn't noticed. Repeat it like a mantra. Let your cells hear it. Let your fear hear it. Let your future align with it. Before the leap, there is always a quiet yes no one else can hear. You were never meant to find your path. You were meant to remember it. Destiny isn't a direction. It's an ancient rhythm reawakening beneath your story. You waited for a sign, a miracle, a confirmation, a moment so undeniable it would silence the doubt. But the sign never came in the way you expected, because it was never out there. It was always pulsing inside, in your unease, in the ache you couldn't name. In the silence you tried to escape. It was the soul whispering beneath the noise, long before the world reflected anything back. Destiny doesn't arrive. It doesn't descend from the sky or break through the clouds. It emerges from within, the moment you stop trying to become someone and start remembering who you already are. The turning point is not marked by fireworks. It's marked by an inner alignment that shifts the entire frequency of your reality. A woman returned to the forest she hadn't visited since childhood. There, beneath a tree, she found a necklace she buried decades ago. As she held it, she whispered, "I've always known where I was going." A boy walked in circles for hours, lost in the desert. Just as he collapsed, he looked to the sky and realized the stars had been guiding him all along. In a dream, a door opened, not in the sky, but in the chest of the dreamer. She stepped into herself and disappeared, into everything. In the end, every external journey collapses back into the archetypal inner return. According to Hillman, the soul has a blueprint, not of goals, but of images that long to be lived. Destiny is not a timeline. It's a symbolic pattern unfolding through choices, silences, symptoms, dreams. And when the psyche becomes coherent, the universe stops resisting, because now you are aligned with your myth. Have you been waiting for something to come save you, but something inside already feels different? Do you sense that the real turning point was the moment you finally stopped running from yourself? That's not the end of the journey. That's the awakening of your true story. Tonight, light a candle, sit in silence, say, not out loud but from the deep place, "I am already who I was seeking." Then blow the candle out slowly, as if releasing every version of you that forgot this truth. It wasn't the universe that guided me. I was the one who finally listened